Great, we are recording. So Rakie, so it's the first time you worked at the TRICYCLE, that obviously has now become the Kiln. What show was that?
It was King HEDLEY II by August Wilson, and Paulette Randall directed it. And it was it was a terrible winter. I remember it was one of those really snowy, will we be able to get home from the theatre kind of winters. And I've completely forgotten when it was. Was it 2001?
I think so. Yeah, it was early 2000. Yeah.
And well, it was lovely. It was lovely working there. And it was the first time I'd worked at what is now the Kiln, and it was the only August Wilson. It still is the only August Wilson play I've ever done. So and yeah, it was lovely. It was. I feel it's even more of a community now. I feel it felt cozy then, but now as soon as I walk in, I just feel there's this kind of wraparound warmth.
And you performed them recently with Half God of Rainfall.
Oh yes. So we did Half God there, in your Ellen's play. I found that the programming is all about making sure that people who live nearby can have their minds stretched by seeing stories that they don't recognise but will hopefully identify with, but also seeing stories that they absolutely do recognise and people that they absolutely recognise, and that's so important.
So, and Half God of Rainfall had an interesting young audience, I thought. What was the audience like for that? Because it was an amazing piece. It was like a poem, really, wasn't it? A series of beautiful verse.
Yeah, Half God is an epic poem, and if you study it, it has epic poem structure, but not iambic pentameter. I think it might be 6 beats or 12 syllables, and a very interesting rhyme structure that goes A, B, A, B, C, B, C, D, C, D. Do you know what I mean? None of which leaps out automatically when you perform it, or even when you read it. But then it occurred to me as I was working on it that Inua had set himself all these challenges. So yes, it's an extraordinary piece, and I expect it will be studied in schools at some point before long. And
it won an award, didn't it? Was it best play?
Yes, best production of a new play, or best new production. I can't quite remember the title, but quite right too. And I think it should have won some more. And that was at the Black British Theatre Awards. Yeah, it should have. It's a beautiful play, or poem. And think of Under Milk Wood. Really, could be either, and it'll sound great on radio as well. I love the fact that in contemporary writing, there are people who respect the form in which they write. Does that make sense? So that they're not simply concerned with telling a good story well, which of course is massively important, but they then set themselves an extra challenge, like an artist deciding that they're only going to use bottle tops to paint to make a picture or something. They set themselves an extra challenge. I have a story to tell. I want to tell it in verse, but I want to tell it in a very strict kind of verse. And how creative can I be within that confined space? And what comes out of that is so extraordinary.
What was the thing you mentioned earlier, which was on Bear Ridge? You were saying you might come back to that. Where was that?
Yeah. So we did, On Bear Ridge was a co-production between the National Theatre of Wales and the Royal Court, and Vicky Featherstone directed it. And in fact, talking about verse, my agent read On Bear Ridge by Ed Thomas, and she said, I don't absolutely get this play, but I think you're going to love it. And she's absolutely right.
So not only have you played many female Shakespearean roles, you have your own production company, and I know you did a version of Twelfth Night recently.
Yes, we've got Shanty Productions, my husband Adam and I, and Adam Smethurst adapted the play for screen, but by adapted he set it in the modern world, but it's the whole play, every word of it. Because it's an educational tool, so we decided we would let the people using it decide which bits of it they weren't interested in. So you can watch the whole thing from end to end, set in with original text, contemporary setting, and we've got a terrific cast. So we've got Sheila Atim as Violet and Sebastian, both twins. Zachary Momo and Lisa Zara, Anthony Bunsey, a list of really, really fabulous actors who did a great job, and we shot it on location in West Sussex, and Ads and the cast rehearsed for 3 weeks as if it was a play, and then hit the set for 4 weeks with everybody up to speed. So it was, even then it was fast, it was really fast. But they did an amazing job, and so it's available on iTunes and Amazon. And the schools and unis have found it, which is great. The whole film is there, and then scene by scene we have some educational talking heads, and we've edited those into each scene, so you can watch it on YouTube scene by scene with the education, or you can just watch the whole film.
Sort of a couple more sort of in terms of overall, if you like, observations about the business for you as an actor, and as an actor of colour. You know, obviously race discrimination still exists. It's still there. Have things changed? Is it the fact that we're even having to talk about it? Does it mean it's still there? Or do you find, where do you find yourself now in terms of how you feel about race and this industry?
It ebbs and flows. Some days I think we're getting on top of this, we're moving on at great speed, and then something will happen that just makes me go, oh man. Like as I was saying earlier, the thing with hair and makeup, and where that comes into play is because when it's not thought of, the texture of my hair becomes an issue. And you go, so that's it's not someone setting out to be racist at all, but my race, my hair, is a thing that you can't deal with. You haven't thought about the fact that you would need to deal with it differently, which is that weird place, and maybe that's where we are for a lot of things, is that weird place where someone will say, well, we don't need to deal with it differently because we're all in this together. And you go, that's the same sort of I don't see colour conversation, isn't it? And I would say, I always say to that, if you can't see colour, then you can't see it when it's not there. You can't see when it's not there. If you don't recognise something, how do you know it's missing?
Because it's a kaleidoscope. It's a whole. There's a whole. It's all about the fact that celebrating difference and being different.
Yes.
You can't just go, all everybody's the same, because we're not.
We're not the same. And it's, you know, and that within the business, I mean, so much is so much better. Telling more stories, telling stories differently. So in terms of something like On Bear Ridge, telling that story in a slightly different way means that I got my hands on the script, and a few years before I wouldn't have got my hands on that script because no one would have thought to give me a play set in rural Wales. So that is all brilliant, and the more of that the better. But there's a layer that we can't quite access yet, and it's to do with people being brave and being brave enough to really call out things that aren't quite right. But it's so complicated, because even as I'm talking about it, I'm thinking, what are you talking about?
I think it feels it's a really sort of small thing, but just jumping back to noughts and crosses, which is why I love it so, there's a small thing like having a brown plaster, and I know a lot of people have talked about it, but it's that attention to detail of difference. Of course, in noughts and crosses, it's shocking. It's interesting that people talk about it so much, about the brown plaster, when, you know, no one thinks about it now, but actually that suddenly made you think about the difference.
Thank you, because that is exactly, when I talk about little things, suddenly you can't think of them, but you're absolutely right. And it'll be that someone brings you some flesh-coloured tights that are nearly black. That's no one's skin colour, you know. It's a colour, it's not a skin colour. So I will now say, so are we saying that this woman wears tights, in which case I can wear these, or do we want it to look like she's not wearing tights, in which case I can't? Do you know what I mean? Those kind of, and if somebody suggests that I wear my hair naturally, is this an honest conversation about the person I'm playing having hair like mine, or is it because you don't want to get into that conversation?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I know that just moving on in that sort of, but in terms of that, who inspires you at the moment, in terms of, obviously it's about, we're saying we're telling more stories, more diverse stories, or even thinking out the box, whatever that means, or getting back to some sort of equilibrium. You know, is there somebody at the moment that's inspiring you in that way, or is there a writer that, or anything that, or stories that have inspired you recently? I mean, obviously Kiln is all about new work, so it's interesting telling stories in that way.
I really love what Inu was doing, because his mind works in so many different directions, that, you know, if you put his body of work together, there's an amazing range of theatre there. So I love that. And I really sat up when I watched Three Sisters, because it was just great to see 1960s Nigeria on stage. And you know that I don't know what you say about this, but one of my favorite moments was all of them singing a Carpenter's song. Because I just thought, you know what, I thank you for just letting these people love stuff, letting them just be people who love stuff, and not worrying about the stuff not being political enough. And so I deserve to say his work. Actually, I tell you what I haven't said, which is that I suppose my biggest inspiration is from the women around my age, and how we've stuck this out and we're still here. And oh my goodness, Susie, you know this, we are achieving things that none of us were anywhere near 25 years ago. You know, we, at that point, at this point in our lives, when traditionally it's all about whatever you can get, great, you know, whatever you can get is good. People are getting stuff that they dreamed about getting 20 years ago. So I'm inspired by that. When I look through, and I constantly, and I say this to younger actors, performers, those people that you're gnashing your teeth at because they got the job you didn't get. Those people who were sat across the waiting room for you to go and get that part. If all goes to plan, you will still be in each other's company in 30 and 40 years' time. So you better stop ignoring each other. You better start smiling at each other. You better start having a chat. You better start meeting for coffee. Because if all goes well, you are going to be here when you're 60, when you're 70. You can't still be ignoring each other. And the more we've spoken to each other, the stronger we've got. I mean, it's undeniable. Everyone's at the top of their game because they've been doing this a long time, but we've all stuck it out. And I do think that's because we've all kind of just thought, you know what, every success that you have, I can breathe in and smile about. And you know, and I say to my girlfriends, I need to see you. I need some energy. I need some energy. I need to see you. I need to talk to you.
That's a good segue into lockdown. So obviously we're not seeing each other at the moment, and but we are in some respects still connected, thank goodness, because of technology. How was lockdown for you and Adam and the kids, and also in terms of that connection, can you still feel connected at the moment?
We are thankfully we're having as positive a lockdown as you can have, because we like each other, we like each other's company. Yeah, there's been a lot of Zooming, there's been a lot of WhatsApping, big old Zoom get together, and then the little things. And it's still, you know, sometimes you think, oh, I haven't heard from someone for 2 weeks, I hope they're okay, and you immediately think, well, what does that mean? Why have they haven't posted anything? They've gone very quiet. I think something I found, a friend of mine rang and we spoke for a while, and then she said, you know, I'm going to ring you tomorrow because I don't think we've said everything. And sure enough, the phone call on the next day was the one where we really talked about how we felt. And she said, yeah, I'm finding that people spend that first call and everything's,
yeah,
but then you go a little bit deeper. And so now I'm thinking, oh, okay, yeah, maybe there's like a backup thing needs to happen, or perhaps a text conversation first of all, followed by a phone call, so we can get beyond the, yes, I was out in the garden and we played chess yesterday, and then we can get into, how are you really? So now I'm trying to do that a bit more.
And I know you have a charity, or you represent a charity, and you do a lot of work other than theatre, other than and that, you know, this is a hard time for charities. So how are you guys?
Well, there are a couple of them. So that I'm a trustee of the Actors Children's Trust, and we are very busy with new applications at the moment. So it's a charity for actors with children. And as you can imagine, because there's no work, or there's a tiny percentage of work, a lot of people who are eligible are coming to us for grants. So I'm glad the charity has the money to support people where they can. And then I'm a patron of the Childhood Tumour Trust, which is a charity that supports young people and families with neurofibromatosis, abbreviated to NF1, which means that benign tumours can form on any of your nerve endings, internally, externally, large, small. And CTT, as it's called, is normally, this would normally be a busy time for us, because the charities was set up primarily to bring people together. So there's a camp that isn't going to happen now.
Well, we'll make sure we put details on the website and things for you.
Oh, thank you. And so what we're trying to do, and social events, none of which can happen, whether it be Build-A-Bear or trips to Chesington, things like that, none of those can happen. And so the charity is having to find other ways to try to bring the kids together, because for the teenagers particularly, that connection with each other is massive, because they just get to spend a few days and not have to explain whatever's going on for them. So we're now sort of really busy just trying to find other ways to bring people together and check that everyone's okay. And the reason that I got involved with CTT is because my oldest daughter has NF1, and she was diagnosed relatively late at 8 years old. So it's something very close to my heart. And along with ACT, they're charities that I have a personal connection to. You know, they mean something to me. So I'm quite involved. I mean, you can be anyway, but you know what I mean? I found them for personal reasons and then got involved in a deeper way.
Okay. So, I mean, in one thing, I mean, are you managing to be creative in lockdown? We might be losing some time in a minute, but, you know, what's something you would say to a young artist at the moment, which must feel like it's bad enough for those of us who've been in the business a while, but those who are just coming in and then they've come in and this is happening, that the industry is in hold. Is there one thing you would say to them?
The one thing I would say is keep your eye on what's happening on social media, because you might find you are able to get to people in a way you never could before right now, whether that be that people are putting shout outs for show reels or new writing, or whether that be a Q&A with such and such an artistic director. Sign up for everything online. You'll find yourself in a room with people you've been nowhere near before. And it'll stand you in good stead for whatever happens next.
Oh, Rakie, I can't thank you enough for sharing your thoughts and your memories with us. I'm looking forward to giving you a big squeeze at the Kiln soon.
Please, yes, please. It's so lovely to talk to you. Thank you.
It's so lovely.
And to everyone at the Kiln, I think you're amazing theatre, and you will weather this storm. And see you on the other side.
Yeah, we will see you on the other side. Thanks, Rakie.